I get questions all the time, or not questions as much as comments of, gee, why can't I get into the illusionist? Why
Okay.
can't, I'm good. I've been working for years. How come, no one gives me the time of day or an answer from a producer? Why do you think maybe the majority of magicians would not be good for a show like The Illusionists?
Um, I think the majority of magicians wouldn't be good for a show like The Illusionists because it has less to do with. I mean, being good is a baseline, but I think it has more to do with knowing who you are and being a really discernible and definable character. Because that's what The Illusionist is. It's the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the magic show, and everybody's got their own, not only their own niche within the magic that they do, but also their own niche with regards to, the audience can look at you and know exactly who you are in the show. And so I think it's about that. I don't think those things are things that most magicians think about very much.
Because you've chosen the daredevil as the character, or stunt performer rather
Yeah.
than a magician. Is that something you fell into, or something you consciously did?
No, it's something I consciously did. Because I did magic back in the day, and I realised that what I needed was a niche. I needed to be able to set myself apart. And so I basically carved myself a niche no one else wants. And it took me all of 10 minutes to just think about all of the things that I wanted to do. And actually what I did was, the reason I got into escape artistry, which is what I did first, the reason that I got into that is because I didn't like it. And rather than going, well, that's rubbish, I'll never do it, I thought, well, what don't I like about it? How can I improve that? What could I do to that to make it, be more interesting?
Was there a question of, hey, most magicians aren't going to try this, so they're not going to really copy me really well, like a lot of magicians get copied? You're doing something that most won't do.
I don't. There are not many people that are going to copy, my set, and I'm very happy about that.
Right. What do you think is the biggest problem most magicians have? Entertainers, maybe even in general. I mean, is there something specific you can put your finger on that?
I think it's that. I think there are two types of entertainment show business. There's baseline. We need a magician, so we're going to book whoever, and then there's the second kind where they're going, I want Jeff Hobson. And I think that's the part of show business that most people want to be in, is to be that, the guy that they want to book. We're booking Jonathan Goodwood, we're booking Jeff Hobson. And I think that the difference between those two tiers are about knowing who you are. It's about having a style and an attitude to your performance.
So do you believe that maybe the magicians that think they're good enough really just aren't, and they're delusional?
Yeah.
What would
do you know what? It isn't about that. Yes, at some level, because there are some really great magicians who would never cut it, and actually there have been some really, really good magicians who have been tried out in The Illusionist and have never come back, because it is the difference is knowing about who you are and knowing who so the audience can get a sense of who you are as a person on stage.
Do you think that maybe also the producer, his personal likes and...
Well, there's certainly that.
Yeah. So if producer, you may be a hit in one show with one producer, and the next one you may just go, you just don't cut it because maybe he just doesn't like you.
Ultimately, it's show business. Nobody really cares. All they want is all they care about is the receipts. So if you do good business and people clap and cheer, then that's that's ultimately the exciting thing. There is a level of the producer of The Illusionist whereby he's got a little bit of ADD. I would say all of this to his face, and also he likes a magic trick when it fools him, and the moment he works it out, it ceases to be as good, which is quite a naive approach.
Sure.
But that's just Simon, isn't it?
Yeah. And we name names, by the way. Yeah, we're naming names. Is there a reality check that people should do, or how they should do it?
I think performers need to take a long, hard look in the mirror and be honest with with what they look like for a start, and work to that. And then the second thing is, don't pick material because you like it or because it fooled you the first time you saw it. Pick material that suits you and who you are and what your style is and what you look like. It all has to point in the same direction. usually if you're watching a performer and everything's good but there's just something not quite right, it's because one of those things is missing.
And we both know of few performers who are very unique, have some strong material, but for one reason or another, they've either are not in the show
Yeah.
or asked not to return to the show. And so, what do you attribute that to?
Could be the producer's tastes. Could be, I mean, also another thing that's really important when you're working, especially in an environment where you're collaborating with other performers, is don't be an arsehole. You know, don't be the kind of person who's going to come in and be the big I am and it's my show and, you know, in your head, because, you know, that's not a good way to make friends.
Offstage decorum is just as important as onstage.
Super important, or if potentially more important.
So have you seen a lot more of in your business, because you also do, you know, television producing, writing, etc. So have you would you say that even not even saying, you know, pigeonholing magicians, also in the realm of TV, movie, and film, that you would have prima donnas that would be passed up?
Of course, yeah. I think it's a baseline. It's a baseline as a performer, and it's a baseline as a human being. You know, be likable, and you know that's the thing. Is then you get asked back. You know, you do more things. You know, if people are paying money to come and see us for 2 hours, and they're actually physically paying their hard-earned money, they want to spend baseline. They want to spend time with somebody that they actually want to spend time with. I'm pretty open about giving these things out because I think it's all important. But doing these shows, the value in doing it is the repetition, and I think that the biggest secret to getting good, and I know you know this, is getting to a place where you can play, where you can, because you're going out and basically doing the same thing, but you need to be able to, in a place where you're listening to what you're saying every time that you're performing, so that you are conscious of conveying the meaning. There's so often you see performers that have the same script every night, and it is just that, and they're not really thinking about it. So I think being conscious of what you're saying is really important, but also being in a situation where you can be in the room and you can listen to reactions and respond, which is exactly, I mean, it's what you do, you know, rather than it becoming, I think it's the difference between acting and performing is, and I think that's a mistake that a lot of people get, is that when you're performing, it's a two-way thing. You know, you're not just performing at them; you're performing with them and listening to them. And I think that
I think you just hit on the number one thing. I think people just believe they're in front of a television screen when they perform.
Yeah,
that's a one-dimensional thing.
Yeah, you have to be in the room. You have to listen to the crowd and be ready to, you know, to respond. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a funny line.
Yeah.
But and it's also not necessarily true that you can plan it, you know, or like you do, and have like a Rolodex of different things, because the truth is there are only so many different scenarios that are going to happen. Right. And then when they happen, you can go, okay, what would I have said? And then you've got that for next time, you know. So being in the room, I think, is really, really important.
Do you have a weak link, you think, in your arsenal of things, boy, I really don't do this really well, it would really be good to do this better? Do you think like there's something that you wish you could work on more? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is all of it I want to be better. I don't have, the problem that I have with a lot of what I do is that it's a lot of it's quite exposition heavy. And so there's quite often a long way to go for the audience to understand and comprehend, and I have to explain what's about to happen, and I think that for me it's always about editing that stuff and just making it as tight as it possibly can, getting rid of anything extraneous unless it elevates.
Do you have help when you develop things? Do you ask for help? Do you hire help?
I tend not to hire people. I mean, people physically make some of the props that I use, but no, I have about 2 or 3 really good friends that I'll bounce things off of, and I think that's good. Find those people, find those trusted opinions, but ultimately, there's only so much that you can do. You know, you can, and I'm pretty good at sort of formulating an act in my head, but it doesn't compare to actually doing it. And then all of a sudden, when you stand it up, you're like, holy shit. No, it's a pleasure. I'm honoured that you asked my opinion about any of that stuff.